I'm running for Congress. I will make everybody in this area, everybody in the upstate, and our nation a good congresswoman because I do know the Constitution. The topic, though, today is taxes. This is April 15th. It's tax day. And I just gave a good speech on the pro-life issue, and I'll give a good speech at our machine gun social on the Second Amendment. But today, we're talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and how our taxes interfere with our basic, unalienable rights. Let's start with the church. There's a lot of talk about the church here today. Taxes, the IRS code, interferes with our churches. Now, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't have ever happened that way. The tax code deliberately, specifically exempts churches. So you say, well, how does, why does it have any effect? The churches apply for 501c3 status. I don't know why they do it, but they do it. And as soon as they do, they're under the IRS code. And it's probably because people say, well, I want to be sure that my donation is tax exempt. You're totally unnecessary, but people do it that way. People in this country have been generous for a long time. They don't have to have a tax exemption in order to be generous. But the taxes are taking the money that would go to charities, that would go to the churches. The taxes are taking it. And so people say, well, at least let me get a tax exemption. We need to get rid of the tax code. The churches would be free. The charities would be free. The money that we have, that we know that we have to tithe. We know we have to give to charity, and Americans have always done it. We're the most generous people in the world. As Pastor Lucas said, who showed up in Haiti? Who showed up in Chile and when the tsunami hit? It's always America. And we don't need a tax code to encourage us to be generous. There are other ways to pay taxes that don't interfere with our First Amendment freedoms. People are afraid. They're afraid to have politics. They're afraid of politics because they might lose their tax exemption or they might get audited. Many of our presidents, too many of them, have used the tax code as an excuse, and the FBI, to audit their enemies. This should not happen in a free country. The tax code interferes with our free market. People should do business for the purpose of providing services and making money. It's called capitalism. We are capitalists, and it's not a bad word. It is not a bad word. Capitalists don't make any more money than people with nonprofits or people in government work. They just do more service for others. It is a wonderful thing that there are people who look around and say, oh my goodness, there's a need for something. And then they provide it. And after they provide it, only then do they get any reward. So capitalism is not an evil thing, but the tax code distorts what we do. To give you an idea of you think about those real estate trusts that people used to have. And in fact, there's something called a real estate IRA. If you put a house in a real estate IRA, then it can appreciate tax-free. But you can't use it, you can't live in it. It's not a second home for you. My first introduction to the distortion of the tax code, how it distorts life, came when I was only 11 years old. And my family was expecting my seventh younger brother. And my parents realized, oh my goodness, we don't need that deduction. We are taxed enough already, and we are deducted enough already. So they started discussing whether or not maybe our aunt, who didn't have any children, could use a tax deduction. And I almost got sent to California to grow up because my aunt needed a tax deduction. Now, at the time, I wanted to go, ladies and gentlemen. When you're the oldest of 8 children, that's a nice idea to be an only child. But think of the relation, how it would have distorted my relations with my brothers and sisters. And it would have been because of the tax code. The IRS is a sick agency. I've taught students who have used their IRS jobs as case studies. And in the case study, they come to the conclusion that it needs to be abolished. And other students will say, "You would abolish the IRS? Where would you get a job? You're an accountant. That's your job." And they say, if we abolish the IRS, business will flourish, and I'll be able to get a job as an accountant at a real business. We don't need an intrusive, inefficient, an agency that pries and exposes people's private lives. You shouldn't have to tell the government everywhere that you make your money and every way you spend it. You should not have to do it. Free people should not have to do that. A fair tax with the elimination of the IRS would produce such a huge amount of money for the government that's another problem. We don't really want the government to do anything else, do we?
No.
No. How many people want the government to get more money? No. If we have a fair tax, all the extra money should go to pay off the debt. And as soon as the debt is, and it's a huge debt, trillions and maybe as much as 19 to 23 trillion dollars. It's staggering. But once that debt is paid off, and it would be, with a good economy, with the IRS gone, a gold-backed currency, we would pay it off pretty quickly. And then we could lower that sales tax. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to live this way. We are free Americans, and we should continue meeting this way and changing the government. Thank you, and God bless you, and please vote for me on June the 8th.